Hey, it's Ned here. This is the why and how effect that actually lowers your drinking. So, in this mini workshop, we're going to discuss the two effects that will get you lowering your drinking, reducing your drinking, and getting it down to a manageable rate that you're striving for. And this training was inspired by an article that I will link in this mini workshop in relation to a study of 8,000 people. And what they found is that they tried different things. Researchers tried different techniques to attempt to lower people's drinking. And what they found is that this combination worked for a third of the participants, primarily all the way through the 6 week period. So that article really inspired me to put this little mini workshop together for you guys. So again, it's all about, having tools and techniques and, obviously doing the inside work. But I wanted to, disclose this information because it's information that's really important to people that do want to, take their control back and really take their health seriously. That's why there's a picture of a cell right in there. That is a picture of the cell with the receptors on the outside. Um, so yeah, but we're going to get into my computer has just frozen. Let me just see. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So um, why everything you've tried has failed. Australian researchers asked that question and they studied over 8,000 people to see what would actually work to get people to drink less. And um, every other approach that they tried failed dismally, right? Things like, and you hear it on the ads when it says, it talks about, it's giving an ad about a certain alcoholic beverage, and then right at the end that says, drink responsibly. I mean, you know, one person's drink responsibly is very different to someone else's drink responsibly. I know that for a fact, so it's very vague and blasé, right? Or know your limits. Another approach, or alcohol is bad for you. I mean, everyone knows that alcohol is ethanol, which is what you put in your car. And there was another interesting article about how we've got a surplus of wine in Australia. And there was an article about using red wine and, having the ethanol in the red wine to supply cars. So I don't know how much truth there was in that, but yep, ethanol in petrol and ethanol in alcohol, it's the same substance. And we know alcohol is bad for us, right? Setting weekly limits, another strategy, but what does that mean? How does that pan out for a lot of people? And attempting to use willpower. So all of these approaches, the researchers looked at and they failed because they were vague. A lot of it is abstract. It's very easy for the brain to ignore, and it relies a lot on motivation, where a lot of the time at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're highly motivated, but then when we're spent and we've had a big day, by the time it gets to 6, it's a very different scenario, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that. So the combination, right, that I'm talking about that they found worked really well in reducing alcohol, and the combination for promoting good health when it comes to drinking less, right, was why to reduce coupled with how to reduce. That was the combination. It's all well and good telling people why they should stop drinking. It's all well and good telling people how they should stop drinking. But when they coupled it together, they found that it worked really well in the study. So that's what I want to share with you tonight. And just a trigger warning: this may trigger some people. This information tonight, but um, that's, and I just wanted to let you know. And the reason that I'm bringing it up is because I actually went through what alcohol does to you and to your cells. I actually went through it not so long ago, and I'll just tell you a little bit about that. But the two things that actually worked was the why, telling people that alcohol is cancer causing, right? And telling them how, what they can do and how they can manage their alcohol consumption is to measure every drink. But they were the two messages that were coupled together, telling people that alcohol is a contributing factor to 6 different types of cancers, and what and how to start taking action towards, reducing your alcohol intake is by measuring how much you're drinking, measuring how many standard drinks you're having, you know, on a weekly basis, because I know that we say, we buy maybe one or two drinks, or we if we buy a bottle, then it's really hard to measure, how many standard drinks that you have sometimes, because maybe there's a half a bottle there and then a full bottle there, or whatever it is, and it gets messy. We rely on our memory, and we don't even know how many drinks we've had, right? So um, the combination over a 6 week period of telling people why it was important to reduce, and then have them count every drink, worked really, really well. So let's get into it. Okay, let's get into it now. um, the first part I want to talk about is, the why, and alcohol is linked to 6 different cancers. And I just wanted to go through that first, because the first one is the mouth and the throat. And in 2024, I was coaching, and I kept feeling that something was awry, and I hadn't drank for a year and a half. I stopped drinking, and I felt amazing. And then I was obviously coaching people, with them wanting to better their situation around alcohol in their relationship. So I was doing, alcohol reduction coaching. Before that, I was doing hypnotherapy for anxiety. And what I found is I actually got checked out in August, and they took me to the hospital, and I knew something wasn't right with my throat, and in October I had a biopsy, and they told me that I had cancer. I had a tumor in my throat, actually on my tonsil, that was 4 centimeters big. It was like the size of a duck egg, and it was so scary. It was the scariest time of my life, because I didn't know what was going on. um, and it really like reinforced, my life around everything, around my health, around my girls, my direction of, the life that I wanted to take, and everything. And you know, it's interesting when you go to the hospital, like the first 2 questions they ask you, and there were so many forms to fill out, because having cancer is a really big deal. Um, is the first 2 questions they ask is repeatedly, they kept asking me, do you drink and do you smoke? Do you drink and do you smoke? If you drink, how much do you drink? If you smoke, how many cigarettes do you have, or rollies, or whatever it is? How much tobacco do you have? Constantly asking those 2 questions. And I can see why. But, um, and then that happened in October. November is when I went to the Royal Brisbane, and I had chemotherapy and I had radiation, and it was a very volatile, it was a very aggressive tumor. And because it was so aggressive, and it grew so quickly, so early, and the type of tumor that I had, when they fought it with radiation and chemotherapy, it reduced in size just as quickly, if not faster, than when it increased in size. So by April 2025, I was cured, but it was a hell of a trip for 6 months, and I might talk about that in another time. But the different types of cancers, that alcohol is linked to, is your mouth, your throat, your food pipe, your esophageal, your food pipe, liver, obviously, psoriasis, Breast cancer increases dramatically, if you are drinking very regularly. Colon and rectal cancer and larynx cancer, which is your voice box. So I wanted to bring that up because I don't hear people talking about it enough, and it does happen every single day. I'm sure everyone that is watching this knows someone that has got cancer or has been through it or is going through chemotherapy or radiation, and it's hell on earth. I tell you, it's but the hardest part is not just going through it, but it's what happens after with the recovery. If you do, end up recovering, and I did end up recovering, having a full recovery, and I'm so thankful for that. So this is the why. This is the why. This wakes people up, right? And this is what it's about. If people want to go and get healthy, then if this wakes up a lot of people, and if I just wake up one person with this information, then this mini workshop has done its job. Okay, so that's the why. Okay, now from the why we go to the how. Okay, and the how is counting your drinks, right? And the beautiful thing about counting your drinks, and I've broken it down here, is that when you count your drinks and you write them down, and there's no judgments, it's just, and I'll go through an exercise that you can do that's really going to help with this, is that it breaks the autopilot. Most drinking is unconscious. You don't decide to have, how many times, I mean, I know for myself, how many times have you said, I'm just going to have a couple, and then you end up having 3 or 4, and then by the end of the night, you don't even know how much you've had. You probably know the day after, right? For a lot of people, they don't even know. But counting forces awareness. And the first port of call with this whole health journey and reducing your alcohol and becoming alcohol free, if that's where you're going towards, is awareness. Awareness is key, right? Because with awareness comes behavior change, not the other way around. You don't just decide to change your behavior without any awareness. If the awareness piece is there and the clarity piece is there, behavioral change is a lot easier. Okay. The other thing that counting your drinks does is it creates data, not shame, and you're not failing. If you drink 5 instead of 3, you're just collecting intelligence. Data equals power. And and I'm obviously alluding to, doing this over like a week period where, if you collect data for a week, and then you collect data for another week, over the course of a couple of weeks, you can start to see, right, what's actually happening with your drinking. And that's data that you're not going to rue yourself with, or you're not going to berate yourself with, but you need to find out, how much you're consuming. It removes vagueness, because a few drinks, and your brain, it just removes the vagueness, and, and it protects the habit. When you're just vague about your drinking and it's just like, yeah, I had a bit to drink tonight. Like, what does that mean? It's all vague. It's protecting the habit. But counting is honest measurement which your brain can't hide. So they're the benefits of, counting your drink. The other benefit is that you can't change what you can't measure. And you look at any successful behavior change, whether it's, weight loss, where you track your calories, money management, you're always tracking, your spending. And the same goes with drinking, right? If you want success in your drinking less journey, where, your health journey, it needs, if it's important, it needs to be tracked, whatever it is in your life, because the uncomfortable truth is that your brain hates accurate measurements, because measurements, they expose the pattern, and patterns threaten your identity, and your identity protects your habits, because your identity, right, is what your mind is protecting, because it's a prediction machine. And if your identity is safe, then we don't want to change that. We don't want to change that habit, because everything's going fine, okay? The minute you look to change your identity is the minute that your brain starts to be a bit wary and think, well, I'm out of my comfort zone. I can't predict the future. Um, things are changing, what's going on. And then that's when, we feel, like we're totally out of our comfort zone because we're wanting to change. And that's why change is so difficult, because it's shifting our identity, and our identity is entrenched in safety and protection. And if we change our identity, then that safety, which is survival, that the brain looks at, is paramount, right? So it becomes very uncomfortable, especially when you look at how much you've drunk, and then you go, right, this needs to change, 60 drinks or 50 drinks or 40 standard drinks a week. I can't keep doing that, and that's probably how many I was having, 40 a week. And, you know, if you do 6 sevens of 42, right? A six pack a night. Six pack doesn't sound like a big deal, but over a 7 day period, I mean, that's 40 standard drinks. It's quite a bit for anyone, I believe. So the failed approaches and why do they work? When you just say, I just want to drink less, it's vague. You can't metricate it, right? And it's just all wishy-washy and grey. Failed approaches like setting weekly limits, it requires constant willpower, and by day 4 your willpower is gone and the weekend is just over the sunrise or the sunset, and and it's the weekend, right? Or when you hear on the adverts they say drink responsibly, what does that mean? Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, if you're someone that's just started drinking, your drinking journey, that would be very different to someone that's been drinking for 10 years, so it's a very vague, and your brain fills in what feels responsible, right, from the past stories, and the filters that you're running through your mind. And generic health warnings like alcohol is bad for you, is, again, it's easy to dismiss, right? And, using motivation and willpower, well, we know how that goes. Motivation is high, it peaks mid-morning, and then by 6 p.m. it fades, right? So we need a system. We need a system, not a feeling. Okay. So um, by using, but I've looked at, right, the article, and the research, and so to put all this together and to make it practical for you guys, here's a 7 day counting challenge that you can do in the privacy of your own home, where you can say, right, it's Monday and I'm going to do this challenge. The rules are that you count every drink, every alcohol drink, and just keep it really simple, whether it be beer, wine, spirits, or whatever it is. Just how many standard drinks are they? If it's a double vodka shot, then it's 2 standard drinks. Obviously, if it's wine, then I think it's 7.5 glasses in a wine bottle, something like that. Okay, so whatever it is, but you just want to be honest. There's no use being dishonest because it's not serving anyone. So the rules are: count every drink, use a tally. The best thing that I found was have it somewhere where you can see it and you can just start tallying it up really, really easily. And by the end of the night, you can see the day, you can see how many drinks you've had, and then you can see the whole week and you can count that and you can see, wow, I had 40 drinks this week, or I had 30 drinks this week. And it just opens up your awareness, and that awareness gives you, the drive to take the next step and saying, right, I had 30 drinks this week. I'm going to, we're going to reduce that, and then you can start to formulate a plan. But this isn't about judgment. This is not about quitting if you are drinking at the moment. This is about gathering data, because data is what's going to give you the plan that you take next, right? And how you're going to achieve it. And you also want to be tracking the context around your drinking, whether it's a certain time or a certain emotion or certain location, whether it's alone or social. And I'll show you what I mean by, by context. This is an example. Probably just take a photo of that, and that would be perfect for somewhere where you could just write it up on your fridge. And you just create a matrix where you've got the date, the time, the number of drinks, the type of drink, your emotion before you started drinking. What was the emotion, right? Was it stress? Was it boredom? It's really important to know that, right? Were you alone? Was it social? And what was the trigger, right? So, for example, Monday night, 6:30, one drink. It was a wine. The emotion was stress, right? I was alone, and it was, what triggered me was a work email. Or, Monday night, 7:15, I had two drinks. It was wine. I was bored. I was alone. And what triggered it was there was some great TV to watch or something, you know. But after 7 days of doing this, right, you can start to review the patterns, whether it was a certain time of day or whether it was a repeated emotion or whether it was social, solo or social, or what if it was a trigger. But this data is going to start to give you a map, and from that map, you can start to build the system, right, from personal feedback, right? And what these patterns will um, start to bring to light, things like when you start to count, the common patterns that you will see are the time clusters, right? Where if you're drinking at a certain time every single day, that's cue based, that's time based, but it's cue based. Your cue is the time of the day. If you know that you're cracking a bottle of wine at 6 o'clock every single day, then the fix, you know, I mean, I'm not saying the fix will be, this will be the fix and it'll be the end of it. But what I'm saying is to be aware of it is that maybe you need to look at interrupting it, right? The cue at 6 by doing something at 5 before the autopilot kicks in, right? If it's emotional drinking, like if it's stress or boredom or loneliness, right? Alcohol is always solving the problem, right? It's a solution to a deeper issue, a deeper problem, right? So if it is stress or boredom or loneliness, right, and it's emotional, right? The fix could be widening your window of tolerance. And your window of tolerance, I've spoken in length about this. It is in my ebooks, in the classrooms. But basically, the window of tolerance is your bandwidth of resilience, where the more you use alcohol to get through the night or the day, the narrower your bandwidth, your window of tolerance becomes. So you can't handle life without having a drink, without going to a substance, right? So this is looking at widening that window of tolerance through breath work, movement, connection. There's different techniques in the dry stack deck that is also in the classroom. There's over 40 different types of techniques to start to build your resilience, where if something does happen and it's emotional, you can work through it. You can ride that wave of emotion, which will only last a couple of minutes at its peak all the way to the shore. Pattern number 3 is solo and social. What this means is that a lot of the time, when, we are alone, it could be something as simple as connection and substituting alone time where you, when you are alone, for mini conversations. So setting it up, but not setting it up, at the time when you're lonely, looking through your calendar and going, right, where are my alone times in my calendar, and looking at and say, these are my alone times. Okay. And this is where I need to start populating my calendar so I'm not so alone. So I've got someone to talk to. So I take myself to events, where I can meet people and put myself in a position where I can connect with people, and then you'll find that when that happens, you're not even thinking about, the drink. It's just you're substituting one stimuli for another, which is human connection, which is beautiful. Um, the fourth pattern is the weekend clustering, where it's like you've worked all week, you're seeking a reward because you've had a controlled week, and the fix is, and then by the end of the week, you're spent and you just want to drink, and the danger zone for a lot of people is, Friday night, Saturday afternoons, for weekend drinkers, they drink quite heavily. So again, you want to be installing interrupts there, purposely installing interrupts, getting accountability, letting people know that you're going to an event, or, you're changing your environment, because environment plays such a big key, and you're mixing it up. You're mixing it up. You're giving your brain novelty, and novelty is paramount when you're looking to change a weekend clustering where you normally just drink. And if you want to change that up, then novelty and something new. And it doesn't mean that you've got to go out and to the theater and spend, $200 on tickets. It could be as simple as going on a long trek, or organizing, um, um, a date, or it could be a movie night. It could be, out to dinner. It could be going over friends' places. It could be anything, but making sure that it's pre-set and done so you can start to mix it up. Um, And the final one in the patterns is the escalation, where you drink and the first one doesn't even touch the sides, and then you go from one and you down the second one, and you're already on your third, and you're really just wanting to escape, or you really wanted to get rid of the pain, or you really want a dopamine hit, and this is all about not resisting that, but knowing that the cue is going to come, and you've got this escalation happening, and you are seeking a reward. And in the last workshop, I did talk about the habit loop, and it's just purely focusing on the middle step, which is the routine, because the fix, like I say here, you've got the cue, routine, and reward, that loop. The cue, the trigger's going to come, right? You know that you're going to get a reward, but it's that middle section, being aware of that, you're really wanting to go to town on some alcohol, and, for whatever that is, and you need to make sure that you're looking at different routines to get the same similar reward, of that dopamine hit, that reward, whatever that is. Okay, but the insight is, you're not weak. This 7 week or 7 day, um, over the course of 1 week, you're running, you're running data every single day, and you're running, and when it is happening to you, you're running an automatic program in your brain, that your brain has installed for years. We've been, when I was drinking, it wasn't something that I just did and my brain automatically did it. I'd been drinking for years, off and on, and then it got worse to the end. when I went through my divorce in 2020. And so what you're doing is you're just over the 7 days, if you are going to do it, starting tonight would be great. Start to get data so it can show you how you can start to, rewrite it. Okay. But this is how you can do it, right? So you can, step one is your building data and you're collecting data. And step one is, well, not step one, step two is you build the system once you collect the data. So there's two different ways to do this. And obviously, we're in a community and I'm here to help you guys. And I'm here to coach people that do want extra support and help. But the free way to do it is option one, which is do it yourself. So count for a week and then count for a second week. And if you can get data for 30 days, I mean, that's amazing, right? Amazing data that you can get, that you can start to look to tweak it and you can start to apply the stack deck techniques, where there's different types of techniques um, in the classroom that I've got. I've got the different programs there that you can go through, all about shame and guilt and, alcohol reset, as well. And also, the 5-2 method, which is going from 5 days to 2 days. So there's a lot of information there that you can grab and you can pick one of those modules, pick one of those programs. And once you get the data of, okay, this is what's happened over the 30 days, I'm pretty good, Monday to Thursday, but then I sort of let the rails slip, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so what's going on there? And you can start to formulate a plan where you can start to reduce, right? But obviously the option one is just doing it, doing it in the privacy of your own home, tracking your progress. And obviously, if you want accountability, in the group, takes a lot of courage to do, but it's a beautiful thing to do it. And it's a perfect space to do it. Put your results in the group, and you will find that a wave of fear could come up, but a wave of courage comes up as well. And that's when people really shift, right? The second way to do it is obviously accelerated coaching. And that's where I'm opening up 3 private coaching spots where I will coach you through this for 8 weeks, where we take your data for 7 days and we build you a custom alcohol reset system, right? Where you're getting coached with me once a week and video support every single day. The biggest time when people need support is in the witching hours, whatever that may be. For some people, it's at 5 p.m., 6, 7, whatever it is. So getting that daily, I'm a high touch coach, meaning that I like to talk to my clients on a regular basis, daily sometimes, when it's needed. Some days are better than others, as you know. Okay. But in the program, we look at your trigger map, your nervous system regulation, your identity, and how you can start to change your identity, because identity, trumps behavior every single time. So it's, transforming into the person that you want to be, in your future self. So yeah, but they're the 2 different ways that you can coach yourself through this. And if there is anyone that is interested in, in coaching, one-on-one, we can just have a chat, to tell you the truth, to get clarity around it, because everyone has their own different story. But the purpose of this workshop was to give you information about, the health ramifications that you could face, moving forward with drinking. We're not getting any younger. That hit me really hard. And I don't talk about it that often because it does trigger a lot of people, but I wanted to bring it up tonight. So, so this workshop was about, not about guilt. It's about visibility. It's about counting your drinks, getting out of autopilot and changing your patterns. And if anyone is interested in just a clarity call, just to have a chat, just to see if one-on-one coaching would be a fit for you, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done. I will leave a link of the my book a free clarity call in the notes as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I will stop sharing and I'll move this over here. And hopefully you guys got something out of it. But I guess to put it all together is there's no wow factor, right, when it comes to changing your life where it happens all in one evening, right? Or it happens in 3 days, This is something that, the consistency is the biggest piece with all of this. And it's little steps every single day, gaining data, knowing thyself, opening up your awareness, which is really going to put you in good stead when it comes to deciding how you're going to, how you're going to transform your life, how you're going to reach your health goals, whatever that may be. But I'm going to leave you guys to it. It's Ned Mira here signing off. Have a nice evening. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And I'll put this training in the community tonight. All the best. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.